Hi, let's begin with Chapter 7. Chapter 7 covers some rather advanced form techniques. As with we've done in other chapters, we're going to be making changes to existing databases. For this walkthrough, we're going to working with Vivant Publishing, and we're going to be covering creating new forms that are a little bit more dynamic and responsive to user interaction. That means in plain English that the forms will make it easier for people to get information from the database. For Vivant Publishing, we will create a customer master form, also called a customer view and update form, which will feature drop-down combo boxes and command buttons. And we will create a rep seminar data form, which is a multi-page form that provides customized information per each book rep and will contain subforms. Be sure to carefully read the chapter before attempting any of the work in this chapter. This video is just to assist you in understanding why it is you're going to be making the steps that you will be making. So open the Vivant Publishing as you complete it, and after making any necessary corrections at the end of Chapter 6. For this chapter, we're going to create forms using the design feature instead of the wizards. So let's just begin by, I should say that the directions for these steps actually begin on page 4, AC 414. So we're just going to begin by clicking the Create button and opening up the form designs to get our design grid. So let's go to Form Design. And you'll see that we have the grid. It looks very similar to the grid in the report section, except it doesn't have the it only has the detail section, doesn't have the page header and the page footer. So it does look a little bit similar. And the first thing we need to do is set the record source for the form. We did this for the reports as well. So we're going to follow the same pattern here. So we want to make sure that this is selected, that little black square selected, and then we want to go to our property sheet, and we're going to choose the customer table as the record source for this form. So we're just going to go down here, and you'll see these are in alphabetical order, and we're choosing the customer table. That's going to be the record source. And so you can close the property sheet if you like. Well, we're going to open it again, but we'll go ahead and close it. And let's just save the form now before we get too far ahead of the game. And we're going to name this the Customer Master Form. So we've created the new form, and you can see now it's populated over here, and we have added this record source, but we need to make some changes to it. Remember, I said it also had a different name, an alias, so to speak, and so we're going to adjust that as the caption. So we're going to open the property sheet back up, and we're going to go back to all, and then at the caption, let's go ahead and put in that other name, and it is called the Customer View and Update Form. So I'm going to just type that in. Okay, and so that's going to be the alias or the other name for this form. And now we're going to close this and start actually designing the report. And we're going to add existing fields. Of course, you'll see that it has already populated with the fields that are in the record source that we have identified that we're going to use. And so we're going to add the fields to the table. And the instructions for doing that, the actual fields, begins on page AC 415. And so let's just add those fields to the table. And the very first one is the customer number. So we're going to drag that first, and it's about midway through, at the very top, but through the page. And we're going to get an insertion point here and actually rename this as customer number. Okay. And then it says once we do that, we need to, we're going to collect several of these at one time. So click on the customer name and hold down the shift key and go all the way down and click on the customer type. And that will select several fields at one time. We've used this feature before. And then we're going to drag this over to the grid, and it's going to populate all of those fields at one time. This is a very handy little tool. So we're going to drag this over and put it, just a little bit below that number, about right here. And you see it sees exactly in the same location. And then we're going to, I'm going to adjust the sizing now to make these fields a little bit wider while they're highlighted. And then I'm going to deselect those. And now I want to select the resources needed field. We're going to do resources needed, amount paid, current due, total amount, and returns. So we're going to select, and you can select those the same way we did the others. We're going to select the one and hold down the shift key and go all the way down to returns. And then we're going to drag these over. And we'll align these later if they don't look exactly the way. In fact, they aren't lined up exactly right. I'm just going to arrow them down once I can see that they're not. Oh, well, maybe they were in right alignment. But I also need to extend these field sizes. So while they're selected, I'm just going to drag them out a little bit. And as before, this grid will open up to accommodate the size. So I'm going to drag this out just a little bit. In fact, maybe just a little bit more. Okay. Alright, so we've gotten that done. And the only one that, let's just check the alignment on these to make sure they're right. But I think they are, but we'll check this one. Remember, we go to arrange, align at top. But it looks like to me that they're right. They look like they're on the same line in the grid. So they look fine. The next thing we want to do is we're going to add a combo box. And a combo box just gives you some options. And before we do that, again, you want to make sure that you, in fact, let's close this field list. Let's just make sure that the use control wizards option is selected, and it is. And we're going to choose a combo box, and a combo box provides two things. It's going to display a set of values, and it's going to give you some drop down options to select those values. So there are two that look like this. This is a plain list box, but this is a combo box, so it provides the list and the drop down. And so that's what we want to use. And we're just going to select that item and then place that onto the grid. And it's going to be for the book rep number, but right now it's going to open up a wizard. We're going to put it about right here. And you see the wizard will advance by itself. And so we're going to go through the steps for that. And once the wizard opens, we want to make sure that we have the first option selected. I want the combo box to get the values from another table or query. And so we're going to use that. And then we're going to click the next button. And the first option up there is the book rep table, which is the table that we want to use. So we're going to click the next button. And the items we're going to choose that we want to see, or we want to see the book rep number as the main field in the combo box. And we want to see the first name and then the last name fields. So we're going to add those one at a time. I'm just going to add book rep number, first name, and then last name. And then we're going to click the next field, the next button. And then we get to the option to set our sort order. And we want to make sure that we sort this by the book rep number. And then click the next button. And then it's going to show us the options that we have. And we want to make sure that we uncheck the hide key column. In this case, the key column is the book rep number. So we're going to uncheck that so that we can see the book rep number. And then we're going to click the next button. And then we are going to want to make sure that we store the value in the field. So we're going to store the value in the book rep number field. So we just choose book rep number. So now this makes the connection between the book rep table and this customer table that we use for this customer master form. And then we're going to click next, and we're going to name this combo box book rep number. This way, when we make changes in this customer form, using this customer master form, it's going to also make changes in the book rep number because we've established a relationship between these two tables. Okay, and then we're going to finish. And while we have this open, let's go ahead and we're going to move this label over a little bit, this book rep number label over just a little bit. It's overlapping that field a little bit. So we're going to move it over. And now let's save the changes we've made. Let's just look at what we have to see what it looks like. So that's what the form looks like now. We're going to make some slight adjustments. I see some things that don't look quite right. The total amount field doesn't look right, so I need to look at that. All right, so that's the design view. Let me just check that total amount field and see if it's set right. Oh, it's not set for currency. And 2 decimal places. I'm pretty sure the instructions will have us do this later, but let's just see what those changes made, if they made a difference. Well, they didn't, so we'll have to look to see what's going on there. Okay, all right, so but let's just move on with the instructions in the book. And right now we're at the bottom of page AC420, and we're going to change some of the options for the we're going to change some of the options for how this sheet looks. And so the first thing we're going to do is click anywhere in the detail section, or you can click the detail bar. We want to make sure that there are no items selected because we're going to be looking, when we click the bar, we're going to be making some editing to it and not to the individual controls, just as we did the report. And we're going to change the background color. And I believe the background color they have you select is a white background color. So, no, they're going to have us choose light gray color too. So if you just, you can use this palette on the format screen. You can get the palette here, and they want us to use light gray 2 color. It's the first color in the 3rd row under the standard colors. So these are standard colors, and it's in the 3rd row, and it's the first color. And if we hover over it, you'll see the name. And so that's the color we want for the background of the form. And so we're finished with that part. And you will see on the property sheet, it updated the color over here. Alright, then we want to format some of the controls. So we want to select the customer number control, not the label, but the control itself. And we're going to turn on the property sheet. Property sheet's open. Go to the all tab, and we want to adjust the font weight. The font weight should be set to semi-bold. So we're going to do that. And we're going to set the special effect property to sunken. So we have to find special effect, set it to sunken. That's going to make it look a little bit different. And let's see. We have that done. We're going to close this property sheet. We have the field still highlighted, and we're going to use the format painter feature. And the way you do that, while this is still selected, you want to use the Format Painter option, this little button up here, and it will actually allow you to apply the same formatting to several items at a time. So we're just going to click that button to capture that formatting, and you see then the insertion point turns to a little paintbrush, and that's what we want. And so we're going to do the customer name control, and it's going to take on those same attributes, and then we're going to click all the other controls in the form so that they all have that sunken look. Let me double click. You have to double click this Format Painter for it to retain it for several. I think maybe we didn't choose the right color for this. Alright, so when you get finished, if you go back, just unclick this Format Painter. I neglected to choose the correct color for this actual field for the controls. It should have a dark blue color. I just realized I skipped that step. So let me show you how to do that quickly. You can use, just like we did in report, while that one's selected, click on the other controls to select them all. We're going to turn on the property sheet, and we're going to set the color to be a dark blue, one of the standard colors to be a dark blue. And we do that by choosing the for color for the font on the All tab. It's right here. And if we click here, we'll get the color palette. And we want to use one of the standard colors. And this should be a dark blue. And we now can close this property sheet, and you see all of them change to a dark blue. So we're right where we should be at the bottom of page AC423. So let's take a look at the form now. Let me save first. And so that's what the form looks like. So we're well on our way right now. Okay, so we're back in design view, and we want to add a title to this and expand the form header section. So all you have to do is click the title. It's going to create a form header and a form footer. You will notice that the form header has the caption that we pre-selected in the property when we created the form. And we're going to expand this section because we're going to add some things here. So we're just going to drag this detail bar down a bit so that we have some room to work. And we're going to click the title to, it's already selected. We want to bold this. You go to Format and Bold. And we're going to grab this handle and bring it in a little bit closer to the name of the title itself. And we're going to change the background color of the form header. And so we're going to click anywhere in the form header section but outside of the control. And then we want to go to the Format Design Tools. And on the Format tab, and we're going to click the background color button. It's right here, and we're going to make sure we choose the same background as we did for the bottom part of the form, and that's the light gray 2. It's right here. Well, that looks different. Let me look at me and make sure I chose the right one. Yeah, that's right. Okay, light gray 2. I had selected the incorrect one, so that one is right. And let's save the changes. And so now we want to add some other things to this form. So we want to make this form really responsive, And so there's some other things we have to do. We're going to add some command buttons first that have some preset macros made to them, but we're going to also make some other forms that are highly customized. So the first thing we're going to do is add some forms to this, some command buttons. If we go back to design, here's the button format, the button tool. So we're going to grab the button tool, and we're going to place it, the first one, down about in this same location. We're going to put it about right here. And it's going to open and launch the wizard. And so we want to make sure record navigation is set. And the first button we're creating is one that is called the next button, and or the next record button. So we want it to go to the next record and click next here. And we want to use the text next record, so we're going to choose text as the option instead of the picture. You can use pictures, and we'll talk about that later, but for this example we're going to follow the book exactly and use text, and then choose next. And then we want the command, right now it says command 16. We want to name this next record. And then you have a sample of what the button will look like over here. And then you just want to finish. And now the button is ready. And then we're going to add the next buttons. Alright, so the next button we're going to add is the previous record button. And it's going to be next to the button we just made. And it might be out of alignment, but we'll fix that later. This is also a record navigation, and we want to go to previous record. Next, we want to use the text previous record. Next, we want to name the button previous record. Okay, and then we want to do a button for adding a record. Slightly different. And we're going to add a record. And for adding a record, this is called a record operation. So choose record operations as the category. And then the first option is add a new record. We want to do that. We're going to use the text on the button add record. And we're going to name the button add record. Okay, and then the next button we're going to make is called delete record. And it's also a record operations. It's the second option, delete record. Click next. We're going to use the text, delete record. Click next. And then we're going to name this delete record. And we're going to do finish. And then the last button we have to do is a close form button. And we're going to go through the same steps, but of course it's going to have a different category. And it's a form operation. So it's for the entire form, and the option is close form. And next, and we're going to use the text close form, and next. And we're going to change the default command title to close form. And finish. Alright, so we have all of the buttons on, and I want to make sure they're in perfect alignment. You can see they're kind of scattered all over the place. So let's just do that first, and before we add the next item on here. Okay, so let me just select all of these once. Go to Align, Arrange, Align by Top. And the spacing, I want them spaced evenly between them. And I think the spacing might already be set that way with the exception of two of them. So I'm gonna say fit to spacing. I'm gonna say, let's see, I want to equal the horizontal between them. And so now they have horizontal spaces equal between the buttons. That'll make them look nice and neat on the form. And so now the next thing we need to do is add a combo box that will allow us to find records. And we're going to do that up in the form header section. This begins on page AC 430. And we're going to go to the Design tab. And we're going to click this More button so we can see all the options. We want, we were already seeing this. We want a combo box. We're going to make a combo box. And we're going to put it about right here. And we want to find a record on the form based on the value I selected for the combo box. So that means that's going to make this combo box interact with another part of the form. So we're going to choose that, and then we're going to do next. And the item that we wanted to find is the customer name. So we're going to add that to as a selected field and click next. And now let's widen these out so we can see the whole entire customer name. And I always scroll all the way down to double check. And if you double click, it should widen it for the longest name. And so that's done. So we've got the name where they're all readable, and click next. And then we're going to enter the name of the title with a symbol in front of it. And this symbol is just marks this name so that you can use a shortcut key in order to access the name. So we're going to use the ampersand sign and then name to find. And that actually names this combo box, just like we named the buttons. But that ampersand means if we wanted to access this on the form, we would hold the Alt key and click N, and it would open this combo box. It would open our combo box for us. And so now we're going to finish that. And so now it says unbound, and that's what it should say. And we're gonna edit this later, so just don't worry about that. And right now we want to add a rectangle to this to kind of add some effect to these buttons that we just added. So click the More button, and you have a rectangle symbol here. And we're going to draw a rectangle around these two, around the label and the field itself. And so I'm just going to draw a rectangle around it. Okay, and there's the rectangle, and you just want to make sure that it encloses or keeps everything. And while it's already highlighted, go to the property sheet, and we're going to add a little special effect to it, and we're going to make it etched. Special effect should say etched, and the back style property should be transparent. We want to do that. Okay, so that's done. So let's just save it and look at it. And there's the rectangle. It is etched, and there's the name to find. You see it's not populated because we have some work to do. Okay, so now we want to test the ad. Let's test some of these buttons. We have to go back into the form view. Let's test the next record button. Previous record button, delete record. We're not going to test that. Close form, we're not going to test that right now because we're still working. But let's test the add record form. The add record form does move, but there's no insertion point. So we want to make sure that the insertion point always appears in the customer number field. And in order to do that, we're going to make some changes a little bit later on. So that we're going to correct a macro. We're going to make some additions to a macro, so that always happens. Let's use the combo. Let's check the combo box and use it. We're going to just choose one. Let's just choose First State College. And then you see this advances just as it should. But watch what happens when we choose the next record button. Notice that the next record does change down here, but it did not change up here. This still says First State College. If I go next record again, it changes now to Key Community College, but it doesn't advance up here. So we have two issues. The add record button does not give us a cursor, and the name to find does not advance when we advance the rest of the issues and the rest of the records in the form. So now let's go ahead and make these changes. Go back to Design View. And the first thing we're going to do is work on this customer number. We're going to name this customer number field because we're going to have to use it in the macro. And again, with programming, programming does not recognize spaces. You have to use underscores instead. So because we're going to use this customer number field, we need to name the control. And over here, you see it has the name, but it has a space and not an underscore. So we're going to edit this to add the underscore, because we want to use that later in the program, in the macro editing. So now you can close this, and we want to go to the Add Record button, and we're going to right click the button, and we want to go to Build Event. We're going to build an event for this button. And you can see it already has opened up, and this macro was created when the control wizard created the button. So it told it to go to the next record. But what we want it to do is, after it goes to the next record, if we click Add Record, then we want it to go to the control customer number, so that it will put the cursor there as the beginning place for the data entry clerk to make entries. So look over at your action catalog and make sure you open database objects. And the item we want to add is the go to control. And you can drag this over, and it needs to be between the go to record and before the if statement. And so now we have this go to control, and we want to make sure that we add customer number. You know, we just added that underscore. We want to add customer number as the field that we're going to use. And you see it was wanting to self-populate anyway. So that's what we're going to use. And that's all we have to do to save this macro. We're going to save it and close it. And now if we want to test this form, let's just test it to make sure it's right. Go back to Form View. And let's add record, and now you see the insertion point is in the customer number field. That's exactly what we want. All right, so now let's address the other issue. We have to change this combo box so that it does everything we want it to do. And so the very first thing we want to do is we want to choose the combo box. Not the rectangle, but this actual combo box. And we want to open the property sheet. And we want to first make the name to find. Again, when you're naming fields that are going to be inside a macro, you make sure that you use underscore. So name underscore to underscore find. That is going to be the name of the field, and we're going to use that in the macro. And then we're going to go down and scroll down till we get to row source. Wait a minute. Scroll down till we get to row source. Where is it? It's right here. And we want to click the build button. It's going to actually, a macro has already, a query has already been created to support this button. But let's just take a look at it. And so this is exactly what we want. But we want to set this sort order for the customer name to be in ascending order. So we're going to change that. We set the sort row. We're going to save this up here. And then we're going to close the query. And so now this will naturally sort the name sort the options by the customer, by the name. They will be in ascending order by the name. And now what we want to do is we want to set an event. We want to make sure that we set something to happen when we use this drop down key. And in order to do that, we're going to, we can first close this property sheet. We don't need it anymore. Let's see. I'm just checking to make sure if we're going to use it in a few minutes, I'll leave it as it is. Okay, so I don't know why they have us close it, because we are going to use it. All right, so you want to go to the event tab. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure why they have you do that. But you want to go to the event tab, and, well, maybe they had us do this for a reason. Okay, there is a reason. Let's close this, and now let's select the whole form. That's why they have you do it. All right, so we're going to select the whole form. It changes the properties that are available, and now we're going to open this back up. I know it sounds crazy, but we open this back up, and we're going to scroll down until we find the control on current. And there's the on current right there. And when we click there, we're going to click the bill button. You should be very familiar with that now. And we're going to choose Code Builder. We're going to create a code in here. So you just click OK. And it already opens with the macro ready. It just needs to have the guts. So it says this is the opening statement, private sub. This is the closing statement, in sub. So we're going to tab to begin writing the statement, and the statement is name to find, remember to use underscores, equal customer number. We wanted to find customer number. Remember to use underscore. And then we're going to put a comment. A comment is always preceded by a single quotation. So we're going to use a single quotation, space, update the combo box. And that's it. And you see, if we click off of it, it will turn green. Green always indicates comments that are actually don't perform an operation but provide information, so that you remember what it is you did and why you did it last time. And then we're going to save this and close it. And now this has been set. There's an event procedure now occupying for this entire form. And the other thing we want to do is let's see. We want to make sure, let's click this name to find combo box, the actual box itself. Let's set the tab stop. We don't want it by default. The tab stop is set to set at every field, but we wanted to skip this field. And so we're going to change the property to no. So we have to scroll down until we find tab stop. Again, this will be easier if they put them in alphabetical order, but they do not. And I think this one is pretty far down the page. We have already missed it somewhere. Oh, here it is. See, the default is always yes. We're going to change this to no. We don't want it to stop there. And we're going to close the property sheet, save the form, and I think that's it for now. And let's test the form, and then we'll see where we are. So let's look at the form. And you see already the name defined is populated, and it's in alphabetical order right here. And so I'm going to choose Calpin's ISD, and it does populate here. And if I do next record, it populates in the bottom and in the top, just as it should. And if I do add record, the cursor's right where it needs to be. Now, we could do a delete record. Let's go back. Let's go and choose a record and do next record and do delete record. And it's going to ask you if you want to delete, and we're not going to do that. And now we're going to test close form. And the form is closed, and that's it. Okay.